Welcome to Cerebral Women in Paris Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. Years ago, after hearing an artist say art will save us, my intellectual curiosity was sparked, and I began a journey to understand exactly how. Through conversations with visual artists and the professionals who support them, I explore how art helps us see our history, our culture, our lives, and the experience of others in ways no other medium can. Capturing these voices is essential. They remind us of the power of art and the importance of noticing life's simple beauty. And now, here in Paris, a city that has long welcomed the daring, the dreamers, and the defiant, I continue these conversations where art breathes, questions, and reminds us that creation itself is an act of liberation. Welcome and enjoy Cerebral Women in Paris. In this Cerebral Women in Paris episode, I feature Trevyn McGowan. She is the founder of Southern Guild Gallery in Cape Town, Los Angeles, and soon New York City, representing contemporary artists from Africa and its diaspora. Over the past 2 decades, she has dedicated her career to provoking and propelling art and design across the continent by empowering makers both creatively and commercially, elevating the production and presentation of work, and fostering an ethos of community. Trevyn and her husband and business partner, Julian McGowan, pioneered Africa's collectible design category with the establishment of Southern Guild in 2008, specializing in unprecedented modes of making, cross-disciplinary collaborations, and the ingenuity of the human hand. With the gallery as their primary focus, they have expanded Southern Guild's program to encompass contemporary art across multiple media and form cross-continental dialogues between artists. Works by the gallery's artists are in the collections of museums including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, LACMA, Art Institute of Chicago, Philadelphia Museum of Art, and National Gallery of Victoria. Enjoy this episode of Cerebral Women in Paris featuring Trevyn McGowan, and visit cerebralwomen.com to learn more about the artists she supports. Trevyn, welcome to Cerebral Women Art Talks in Paris. I'm excited to interview you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be talking to you, Phyllis. I'm a huge fan of the podcast.
So, when, during your successful career as an actress, did you recognize your interest in supporting visual artists from Africa and the diaspora?
I think because I'd left South Africa when I was 16. I went to London to study. I had grown up with, my father was an interior designer. My mother was very interested in the way, the home looked, and they were both collectors. And so I had grown up with considering what your environment looked like. I had also, alongside, I was an actress for a while in London, and while I was working with properties. I was buying and converting spaces, and so it was always this idea of a visual language and a transformation was always important. And I would come back to South Africa all the time, and I would work with artists and makers from South Africa for projects in London. And that sort of formalized in my 30s when I moved to Clerkenwell, and I started doing homes for other actors. And my career path took such a turn because I suddenly felt that I had more control and I could explore areas where it was down to me of the kinds of ways I was working rather than being reliant on a project always. So that was the start in my early 30s of really working more cohesively with makers in South Africa. And when I moved back in 2003, that it became a kind of all-consuming passion, really.
Do you recall which artists really caught your eye early on?
Well, we were working a lot with three-dimensional design and makers and collectible design and functional pieces. And so there were people that formed part of the kind of integral evolution of that category, people like Gregor Jenkin and Dr. and Mrs. and Porky Heffer, Andile Dilvani, Zizi Poposwa. Some of these artists are people that we still work with today, 18, 20 years later. But I think there was also a real breadth of interest. We were collecting work by fine artists, Claudette Schroeders and Conrad Burtis, Brett Murray, Sanel Achenbach, and we were also trying to interpret what we saw for a global audience through different avenues and different conduits. Not a formal gallery at that stage, but really just sort of, my husband is English, we'd lived in London for 20 years, and there was a wonderful kind of evolution of creative expression that I think we were probably part of in that functional category, but also the galleries were really getting established. It was before we even had contemporary museums in Cape Town, before the Norval and Zeitz-Mocha. But it felt like a very dynamic time, and it felt very exciting to be a part of that conversation and that evolution.
And that inspired you to open up the gallery both in Cape Town and Los Angeles?
Well, so that was a longer journey, but we started Southern Guild in 2008. So we started with quite large-scale exhibitions, very big curated spaces. We didn't have a physical space when we first started, so we would work within other gallery spaces or in foundries, in commercial institutional buildings, and we would do these mammoth shows of about 250 objects or works of art with over 100 artists. And it was really about being catalysts for conversation and collaboration and integration between people that might never have worked together before, mediums, categories. And it was really about wanting to express a new language, I suppose, and a new way of seeing and a new way of communicating. And we started a design foundation and a design seminar program. We worked with the Danish government to promote the cross-pollination between countries within the continent. And so it was a very broad, exploratory, almost PhD in what's possible in working within the creative landscape. And as we matured and as our voice and what we wanted to communicate became clearer for us, a more formalized gallery structure became in place. But we had a huge fair that was a bit like Design Miami, where some of the top design galleries in the world participated, Carpenter's Workshop, R & Company, and people like Stephen Burks and Thomas Heatherwick and David Adjaye and people like that were all part of this presentation, really, I suppose, this experience. And then from 2014, we had a physical space in Cape Town and we started exhibiting internationally from 2011. And then it became a more structured, formalized way of presenting. And then LA was only opened 2 years ago. And that was because we really felt it was necessary to have a year-round presence rather than just participation in fairs, and that our artists deserved that platform, and also to create a conduit for conversation between the two continents and to work more closely with American-based artists.
And what do you enjoy most about owning a gallery?
I think first and foremost is the interaction with artists. It's an absolute privilege to go into a studio and to be working with people whose output you admire so much that you get to see the process and the thinking behind the work. So it's not only just getting to appreciate what comes out of the studio at the end, but actually going on the journey with the artist, and be that a bumpy, difficult, complicated one where there's blocks and confusion, or where there's this wonderful expulsion of creative energy and force. So that is probably the most satisfying and interesting. But I think I also really enjoy empowering and problem solving with our team. There are about 40 people in our team, a lot of whom are women and who have very strong ideas. And it's truly a great delight as part of my working life to be able to work in a very non-hierarchical way, in a very democratic way, and to hear people's thoughts and ideas and to strategize and problem solve around what we're trying to achieve together. And then exhibition and world building, really, exhibition making and world building. So we're putting our perspective of how we believe things can be experienced together in a way that is hopefully unique to us. So it's quite multifaceted. Travel, engaging with the ecosystem globally, what other people are doing, learning from other galleries, learning from institutions. It definitely has never been a job or a profession. It is especially because I work with my husband. So everything is embedded and immersed in this experience of looking at things, of imagining how we could do something differently or better, and then this engagement with the core focus, which is the artist.
And what type of relationship do you have with the artist? What type of support do you provide them?
It's a very intimate connection, I think, and one where we really, as I just was outlining, one where we really like to be involved in the process. There are some artists who are more private about the way that they work, but I think even through that, we are there to push ourselves to learn and about how we can better serve what they need and what their hopes and dreams and what they're wanting to express. And not only that, but how their careers can develop and be pushed in different ways. So we're there to help facilitate that, but also to learn ourselves in the process. So it's a very kind of symbiotic give and take, and we like to live alongside our artists. So we're called a guild for a reason. It's, again, something that's very supportive and collaborative. We all stand in a circle. A lot of our artists, as they join the gallery, and they support one another's openings and exhibitions, and even in the making process, they collaborate with each other. So there's something where we do join. I hate the idea of, a gallery's a family, but it's more than that. It's something where we are an ecosystem as a gallery alongside our artists. We are intimately involved, and I hope that we propel and provoke in a challenging way. But we're also there. We are quite unusual to some galleries in that we provide a huge amount of infrastructure for production. So because my husband was originally a theatre designer in London and he worked around the world for 20 years. So he went to Central St. Martin's. So he's got a very strong art background himself and a making background. And I had an interiors practice. And so we know a lot about the kind of way things are produced. And a lot of artists like the fact that we can open avenues they might not have been able to on their own. I'm talking about the actual making, the infrastructure, the manufacturing partners, all of that. It becomes a studio of ideas and possibilities, and that's what we've got a very big campus. It's about 36,000 square feet. We're right next to 2 bronze foundries. We've got artist studios within there who have kilns and painters and sculptural making, and so there's a very dynamic, energized atmosphere around the production of work. So that, I think, is quite a unique way Southern Guild operates.
And how do you like working with collectors?
I think that's also potentially why I know that obviously it is a very difficult time. It's a difficult time politically, economically for the world, and specifically within the art world. There's so much reported difficulty and contraction and bad results. But for us, it is a period where we are growing continually. We're expanding and evolving and connecting more with collectors. And our conversations are very deep and long, and it's not transactional, although we're doing more fairs than we ever have, and kind of the top tier of fairs now. We've just come from Frieze London, and big collectors have become such close friends that they're there every day. They're actually kind of talking to other people on the booth, they're giving us advice, and so it's community building, really, and that's how we engage with our stakeholders and our collectors too. I hope that they start to get something from the closer connection with the artists, the studio visits, the meeting up in different cities around the world. And so you build an authentic connection rather than just, this is something that you should buy because it's going to go up in value. They become invested in the artist's practice.
You mentioned that the gallery is growing. Can you expand upon that?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we opened in Los Angeles 2 years ago, and we've got to a point now where that was such an incredible introduction to the American landscape, to be there all year round and to learn and connect with artists, with institutions. We've had an amazing response from the institutions, with the press, with our collectors, that we feel we're at the point where we're ready to move to New York, which is obviously a very densely populated, art-saturated capital of art dealership in the world. And we've got to the point where we're really excited to announce that we are opening in Tribeca in March of 26. So in about 4.5 months' time. And yeah, we feel that we've been amazingly received by the American audience and that this is the next stage. So we are opening a 4,000 square foot space in a beautiful double-fronted cast iron pillared building. And we're tremendously excited to be expanding at a time when potentially we could be going in the opposite direction.
So let's talk about art for a second. What do you feel is the purpose of art?
Obviously, I think the first thing it is to make us feel something. I think specifically the art that we're interested in working with, beyond making you think, I like to think that it makes you feel, so that you're out of your intellectual self and you're into your inner self, your emotional self, your heart, your spirit, your, those things that are intangible and that are not easily accessed on a day-to-day basis. And so you look at something and you interpret it for yourself, you feel something, and then you start to think about it, I suppose. And in some instances, art will be very provoking. It might be uncomfortable. It might be challenging and confronting and triggering. But I think that all of these things are important. And I think that that is the role of the artist, and it has been for centuries, is not to be safe. And I know that that was one of the criticisms in London recently, was that in this challenging market, people are frightened to be contentious or to take a risk. And I think that's the time that we most should, because it's how we connect back to ourselves. So I think it's important to be as brave as you can possibly be when presenting art, when making art, and when buying art, really. And I also think, one another thing that I think is a little different about Southern Guild is that I believe that art is a lot of different things, including something that can be used. And there's obviously this age-old discussion around whether something is craft, whether it's design, whether it's art. And for me, it crosses across all of those boundaries. If something is exceptional and extraordinary and is unique in the world, and the maker is saying something, and there's narrative behind the piece, behind the practice, and it is unique to the person who made it, then it is elevated to art, in my opinion.
Do you feel Hispanic, Latinx, Black, Asian art can be defined?
I think kinda. I think that those are terms that, do they necessarily need to be in place to define work from thousands or hundreds of thousands of artists? Is it risking oversimplification or reduction? These are potentially not fixed categories, but they're shifting cultural constellations, and they're changing all the time. So I think what's shared is this kind of negotiation and requirement for visibility and for self-determination. But I think it's a framework for discussion. But I think that's, coming from Africa, representing artists that are, many of our artists are Black, some of them are not, but they are all from the continent, primarily. Not talking about the artists that we have started working with more recently, but there is this idea that there's this trend of Black portraiture and no longer being fashionable. And for us, portraiture is portraiture. We're not pigeonholing ourselves in this category that is in or out of fashion. So I think labels serve to a degree, but I think what's more important is fighting for the right for every artist to have equal standing. And hopefully I vote for a time when art is just art, rather than where there is the inequalities so that you have to fight for the right for that category of art to find its rightful place.
What do you feel is the role of the trustee of an art institution? Do you think they should be instrumental in trying to bring about change in terms of what major institutions, what type of art they add to their collections?
Without a doubt. I think that institutions who are collecting are snapshots of our time. And if they're only seen, those collections are seen through a lens of what is, again, fashionable or what is the greatest, most desirable thing because everybody's bidding on this one category of art, does it represent where humanity sits at any given point in time? I think things need to be of excellence. I think they need to be the best of what they're portraying and what they're saying. But I think it is essential to be deeply curious and investigative and thorough. And I think that is the role of the curators because they're bringing the work forward for acquisition for the most part. I think, obviously sometimes trustees will bring work in, but for a lot of the way that the process works, work is being assembled. And I think that we shouldn't be trying to please the trustee or trying to please the zeitgeist, but rather to be being thorough as this idea of preservation for humanity for the long term.
What trends are promising?
I think this trend of not collecting in the way that generations that have come before you, not all, and that's a blanket statement, but I suppose we got to a stage where the auction prices, the massive escalation of prices, and a work becoming so desirable that it was, double, triple, quadruple before you knew it. And that's where this terrible tumbling of value has come about. And so I would hope that this trend of first-time collectors, people who have not necessarily grown up through generations of a way of buying and a status around art, but more around inquisitiveness around a practice, or again about how something actually just makes you feel, or how you just love the way that something looks. And so collecting through a much more personal, intuitive way and a deeper connection with wanting to explore an artist, how they work, what motivates them, relationships with gallerists that is about kind of supporting that gallery, supporting the group of artists that they think are worth considering. This is what I'm sensing with galleries that are during this difficult time, that are expanding and that are actually making a success during this time, is about a more thoughtful, conscientious and honest way of interacting with collecting. Maybe that's just a personal trend that I'm seeing and thinking is great, but it seems to be a lot of the conversations I'm having with other journalists or with other galleries that it is shared with other people.
So what is it that you're excited about right now?
I'm super excited about showing at Art Basel for the first time. That's a big deal for us. And I'm super excited about the show that we're about to open in a couple of weeks' time in Los Angeles with Essence Harden. Essence has been such a supporter of the gallery from the time we opened. She's chaired a number of panel discussions that have been some of the most formative of my professional life, really, of the conversations that have taken place. And Essence was just opened, made in LA at the Hammer, and is the curator of the Focus section at Frieze LA. And we've been speaking for over a year about her curating a show in the space. So Driftwork opens on the 13th of November in Los Angeles, and that is a real kind of dream come true. So I'm really excited. I'm honored to be working with Essence. We followed that shortly afterward with Art Basel, and then we open in Tribeca in March. So those are three very busy things that are taking up all of my time and imagination and kind of excitement. We also, obviously, Cape Town Art Fair is in February, just before Frieze LA. And this year we have the Brooklyn Museum coming out. We're hosting a lot of American collectors who are coming for the first time as part of the Zeitz MoCA fundraiser that will raise funds for the museum, which is a couple of 100 yards away from us. So it's a very busy 6 months, and we'll be in Frieze, New York with a big solo show by a very exciting artist that we've been working with more recently who's US-based. So this is the next 6 months are very full for us and really exciting.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. This is going to be the last question. So as a gallery owner, how do you want to impact the art world? What do you feel is your role?
I think that the world is so full of things, and there's such a disposable culture. And I think that if creation is going to happen, and if we're going to put things into the world, they need to be objects that have longevity and that have permanence and that have meaning and can last for a very, very long time. I think that is how we counteract this other culture that happens. So for me, it's about true, authentic agency, commitment, authenticity, morality, about what you bring into the world that is about storytelling, cultural preservation, brings about healing. You change mindsets, you educate, inspire. So I think, you're not waking up every morning thinking, how do I do all of these things? But if you have a mandate and foundational pillars that you and your team are working with, that always has this idea that everything has to have richer and deeper meaning, then your work kind of carries that weight of responsibility with it. And, that's about creating opportunities for artists to have agency, to bring marginalized perspectives to the stage, or to make the invisible visible. It's these core foundations that then make you really, however challenging things become or depressing or whatever, that you're bringing about something that has meaning. So I think that is my role. And obviously a gallery has to be successful financially in order to continue to exist. So you have to deal with those day-to-day challenges and just world problems around how to make something sustainable and viable and financially rigorous. But I think that for all of us, I know that the artists that we work with and my team and my partner, Julian, it's a much greater calling. It's about these other foundational aspects that make us get up in the morning.
Thank you so much for your time and for the work you do supporting artists. It's necessary and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do, because you're providing a platform for people to share, and that we can all learn from. So thank you so much. And congratulations on being in Paris. That must be very kind of, lovely new chapter. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.